Okay, welcome everybody. I'm excited to introduce my guest today, Diane Kubal. Diane, welcome to the program. I'm excited to hear about the work that you do with really professionals in this space of expertise. And let's get right to it. Tell me about the work you do and a little bit about Diane, and we'll jump into the conversation.
No, sounds great. Well, thanks for having me, Dean. I appreciate it. So, although I'm not a speaker, I work with speakers, and you can say I'm a blended online learning expert. And Fulcrum Network, my company, has been known as a talent resource agency for HR, learning, OD for professionals for more than 20 years. And over 5 years ago, we started providing fully supported online course development on our blended learning platform that allows consultants to build everything in one place. So we handle all of the technical and administrative aspects so that our clients can focus on growing their business and their expertise.
Very interesting. So, tell me about the journey into that space. You said that business has been around 20 years. How did you end up getting into it, and what are some of the maybe changes and lessons that you've gathered over that time?
Yeah, so I've always been this matchmaker, and in 2017 or so, I had some of my own content around identifying a person's natural gifts and talents. And I created this program called Career Essentials. And the way that I did it was I took this course on how to create what's called an experience product. And it was really taking in person content and making it engaging in an online format. And I love this course. I was a star student. I was one of the few that actually came out with a program, sold the pilot to a client, and I was just on fire with this idea. And so I did a webinar for all the consultants in my network. And I told them, you guys all have to take this course and do what I did. Take your content and convert it into this experiential online format. So this was in 2018, before the pandemic or anything. And 8 people signed up, and not one of them came out with a course. And they all were like, Diane, can you help me? I can't figure this out. And so I realized, you know what, there's something here. I understand something. They need support. They couldn't make some of the translation because there's quite a steep learning curve in doing this kind of conversion. It's a lot more complex than you might think.
Let's explore that because you mentioned the pandemic, but I'd say what I've seen over the last probably 5 years or so, and you'd have a perspective on this. There was a big push. Everybody get your course and build a course and release a course, and then a lot of that's really kind of gone away as I think a lot of people found that there wasn't a lot of people finishing courses. There wasn't people buying the courses like they thought. They had this vision that they'd put it up and everybody would be spending 199 as fast as they could, and they saw their road to riches. What are some of the challenges that maybe are misconceptions or things that people run into about moving content online, and what is it that we have to realize in order for it to be successful?
Yeah, those are some really great points. One of the things that happens is that the expert wants to give all the things that they know, all the content to the people because they're not going to be there. And so they just overwhelm them with too much. And of course, then people can't complete it. It's way too much. So the completion rates are really low when it is a self-paced program only. And actually do a webinar where we say why the set it and forget it approach doesn't really work, because people need access to the expert. They need to get their questions answered because they're not in the room. And so recreating that experience, anticipating their questions, thinking about what kinds of support they need is really important. And that's why I am not a proponent of 100% self-paced digital learning. What I focus on is what I call blended learning, where the expert is accessible, the content is available, and you can make it more affordable for the organization to reach more people. So we always have some kind of access to the expert, either live virtual, live in person, as well as providing written feedback and social communities, because people don't only learn from the expert, right? They learn from other people. So having the participants, even before live sessions or after live sessions, talk with each other, learn from each other, make comments. That is really much more effective. And we don't just do, a one and done sort of thing. We do it over time. So it could be a week, it could be a month, it could be several months.
That's
That makes the
interesting.
learning stickier, is if you do it
Mm-hmm.
over time.
And I know firsthand, like I'm guilty of seeing a topic that's a course, I buy it, and with this intention, right? We have this intention of, oh yeah, I'm going to watch that, but there's no urgency around it, right? This do it at your own pace. Well, there's always something that's more pressing and more urgent. So it sounds like you've seen it to be really important if we have almost a cohort approach to it. Are you seeing that where there's a start time and there's a set group of learners and they're going through it maybe together, building some of those relationships, access to the expert along the way, and so it feels a little bit more engaging? Is that some of the difference for the blended approach?
Absolutely. And one key component is micro learning. You've really got to take the content and break it down into these little bite-sized chunks. So any video that we have would not be more than like 3 to 5 minutes. And that's another thing that a lot of people think micro learning. Well, you take the hour video and you just break it into little 5 minute chunks, but there's got to be the video and the concept, something that they need to do, a downloadable worksheet, a post in the community, an exercise that they're preparing for, that they're actually going to work through in a live session. So there's a lot more things that sort of get blown up or expanded in this blended approach because they're going to be reviewing it more than one time. There's a concept called spiral learning. I think my daughter learned this like in seventh grade or something, and they were learning about money and percentages and fractions. And so they would first start off and they would learn fractions. And then a week later, they would learn percentages. And then the next week, they would do some activities with money. And, there's all these like things with decimal points. So they're taking that exact same concept and they're applying it in a number of different ways over time. So it makes it stickier and they get it. Maybe they don't get percentages, but maybe they get fractions. And so we're doing something kind of similar. We're presenting the concept, they're watching a video, they're doing an exercise on their own, then they're processing it in a group. So they're touching that content way more than just one time. And not just one time in a 2 hour live session, one time in week one, and then another time in week two, and then another time in week three. So you can see how there is a bit more repetition and it forces them to do something. The blended approach definitely puts more onus on the learner to be accountable and responsible for their learning versus just the facilitator having to be a phenomenal, teacher or facilitator, because we know everybody can do that and we love that and they have a great experience. But the important thing is what happens after, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. It's you think about the smile sheets after a session, and people are like, "Oh yeah, great instructor and great experience and great room." And then what we know is learning collapses within a matter of weeks, and the retention and application isn't there. So I really like this approach, and I'm still working on the fractions thing too. So I might need to get into that course that your daughter took in seventh grade. Um, but I love that spiral learning, and it sounds like with micro learning, like that's even a good lesson. If we get good at that, and what's anybody that has built created content knows that something that's 3 minutes sounds like, oh, that will be easy to make, but I found a 3 minute session is harder to make than a 45-minute session, right? Because you have to be so clear and so crisp about it. But it's probably good practice and even good content for people to share in a social way, right? So if I have a 3 minute example of a learning and I've done it well, if I put that on LinkedIn, that's a nice probably piece of content and even an example of this is what the other 17 modules are like, here's one thing that I want to teach you. Have you seen that happen, or are some of those lessons in micro learning portable into the social world?
Yeah, I think they absolutely would be. I haven't necessarily seen a lot of people doing that, but you certainly could. It might be just because I'm not aware of it. I'm working with them on the learning piece, not so much on the
Hmm.
social learning piece. But each little piece of content needs to be something that the participants can accomplish in 5 to 10 minutes. And one of the things that our platform does is it's gamified. So they get points and they feel like they are making progress. So if you have a 45-minute thing or, it's just video after video, they don't really feel that sense of accomplishment. And when we do a cohort, we have a leaderboard. And so we'll have some like little timelines, after week one, we'll take a look at where of these 25 participants are, who's in the top five, and we'll post that. And people will come back and they'll say, well, wait a minute, I was on, mission number or lesson number 15 on that day. How come I wasn't there? Well, maybe you did that in the afternoon, not in the morning. But even adults really like that recognition and that gamification. It does make it more fun.
Yeah, there's something about having a scorecard that captures our attention, right? So it brings us into it. We like to compete, we like to do well, and we like to know how we're doing. Let's pull out your crystal ball here for a minute, and with your expertise of what you've seen in the industry, we have speakers and trainers and experts that are watching this. And what do you see for some of the trends or changes or things to be aware of if I'm in the world of speaking around my expertise? I'm training in person and looking at some of this blended approach. But what are some of the trends that we should be aware of that are coming down the road?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Blanchard Companies actually does a survey every year on trends in learning and development. And they looked at how people were consuming training, 2020, before the pandemic, and then after the pandemic. So before the pandemic, most of it was instructor led, like 70% was in person. And during the pandemic, instructor led obviously took a dive. And as you go forward, people are starting to want more instructor led, and it's, like 30 to 40% of how training will be done. The virtual instructor led obviously hit its peak during the pandemic, but people just took their live sessions. Here's my day long program. Let me do it a day on Zoom. And we figured out that that doesn't work. And there's been some learning over time. And so this virtual instructor led is, like 30 to 40% as well. And then interestingly, the online, the self-paced learning was about 15% in 2020. And when you look at the chart that they provide, it actually looks like it's kind of flat, but now it's about 30%. So the self-paced piece has doubled. And what's happened is organizations are wanting a blend or a combination of the self-paced, the live virtual, the in-person with some kind of coaching, whether that's individual coaching or group coaching. So all of these modalities and more are going to be what clients and organizations are wanting over time.
Hmm. For sure. Yeah, and I think it's the key for anybody who is a expert who speaks or a trainer to really orient ourselves around what's my objective. My objective is the transformation and success of my audience, and I'm part of that medium because of my expertise and experience and how I approach solving the problem that they're having. But we also have to recognize the dynamics of people, right? And you can't just give people the answer and see the transformation. And so having that type of spaced out learning experience supported by others, multifaceted, um, I envision that growing more and more and more over time, along with our distributed work environment. It's hard to get a company to say, oh yeah, we're going to take this team and we're going to spend 3 days together doing training.
Yeah,
It does.
that's
It's
not
not
going to
happening.
happen. No, but you mentioned something about the spaced out learning. There actually is something called spaced learning. And when you're presenting people something prior to a live session, the brain starts to work on that unconsciously. And then they see it again, in a live session. And then the brain remembers that and it deepens that learning. So the spaced learning is a very effective method that people don't even realize it's working on them. And the other trend is AI. So this is going to be a really important thing in terms of personalized learning. So when you're a speaker, how do you get to the level of personalization? And in our platform, we have one-on-one written coaching feedback. So participants can ask questions, and this is sort of one of the ways that even if you're not there, you can provide answers. So we have a way for the facilitator to provide a written personalized response, or in our platform, AI can do it for you. So as the coach or facilitator, you can look at the response. You can say, oh, I like this, send it, or you can add to it. So that personalized learning is going to be really huge. And we're even doing some work around using AI for the design of learning and using that as like a taste of a consultant services. We're creating like little mini courses. So when a client knows you and they like you and they say, oh, can you send me something? But you don't want to send them all of your intellectual property, right? You don't want to send them your slide deck. So you can create this little mini course that's on this AI platform that we use, and it gives the client a little sense of your expertise. Hopefully, there's some compelling content in there that gives them some sort of aha, and then makes them say, "Oh, I really need this, and I want more. I need to call Dean, and
Hmm.
get more information about how we can bring this to our company." So we're using AI in a number of ways, not only for the learning piece, but also for marketing.
I love it. Awesome. Diane Kubal, uh, if I'm an expert, a speaker, or somebody that's just curious about how do I step up the impact on my learners, how might I follow you or get in contact with you?
Yeah, so obviously you can connect with me on LinkedIn. So Diane Kubal. Our website, fulcrumnetwork.com, is another way. And yeah, just reach out to me via email, dk@fulcrumnetwork.com. I respond in all ways.
Awesome. Diane, thanks for sharing your experience and your perspective on this really important world for so many of us. And I look forward to learning more from you again soon.
All right, great. Well, thanks for having me.
Take care.